Alright folks, here's the final step. We've got our assembled detector. It works great, looks great. Now we're going to make the cables. So we have two cables. We'll start with the audio cable. How to distinguish the audio cable from the smartphone cable. It has 3 rings on the connector, so whereas the iPhone one has 4. So we're going to start with the one with 3. You're going to need one of the servo wires, one of the audio cables. You're going to need a lighter, perhaps a match or a candle, but a lighter is going to be easier. If you have a heat gun, that's awesome. That's the way to go. And a soldering iron and some solder. And you're going to need the shrink tube that was included. The thinner tube might be clear in your kit, or it might be black, and then the thicker one is most likely black. So with the thinner one, we're going to actually cut it into fourths. Doesn't have to be perfect, but and then the thicker one we're just going to cut in half. And so we're going to set aside two thinner ones and one thicker one for this. Then with the servo cable that has one side tinned, pull the wires apart a little bit, about an inch or so. And then we're actually going to cut the positive one, just cut a little bit. Because we don't want it to make contact with the other wires, so that way it's still there for structural integrity, but it won't produce any electrical contact. And then for the in terms of the audio cable, the wiring is we don't want the red one on this one either, so we're going to just cut that just below the tinned part so that it won't make electrical contact either. Alright, and then take your thin tube, put it around the black one, and make sure that you've pulled enough so that you have a little bit extra so you can actually do the soldering. And then the connection is going to be green to white, so the green one on the audio cable to the white of the servo, and the copper colored one to the black. This is going to be really hard to hold, so it's if you've got masking tape, or if you can have somebody hold it, or if you have a helping hand, that's great. I'm going to do it with tape so that I can show you it's possible without that kind of thing. So just tape it to something where the wire is sticking out a little bit, and line up your wires. If you have a friend to help you hold this, that is great. Don't burn them. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you want the wires touching before you solder it. Okay, so they're touching. And then what you do is, as you heat them up, you apply the solder. So this is easier with a helping hand tool. If you have one, that'll make your life easier. Okay, and just make sure that just the tin parts are touching. Otherwise it won't bond. So then as you heat up the wire, you apply your solder, and then make sure that it is connected properly. So do a little pull on it. If it comes apart, then you've missed it. Make sure that it's smooth all the way around. This one looks good. So then next connection is green to white. So gonna if you can get help on this step from a friend, that it's much easier. We do it in teams of 2 when we're making them. Much easier. So alright, so make sure they're touching. Heat them up together. Do the pull test, make sure they're good. Okay, so then we're gonna oh my gosh. I made a critical error. I forgot to put the shrink tubing around the audio cable, so I'm gonna actually have to undo my work, put it on. So remember to put the thicker one on first. So if you need to undo it, you just heat up the solder joint, pull them apart. So then slide your thick shrink tube around the audio cable, and I would honestly recommend just going really far just so it doesn't interfere, because you can always slide it back up later. Alright, so we're going to do this again. So since I've already got a decent amount of solder on the joints, I'm just going to heat it up and try to bond them directly. Okay, they look good. I'm going to redo one of them, it just doesn't have enough solder on it. Okay, and then when they're joined properly, they should make good contact. They look clean. So then to seal it up, slide the heat shrink tubing all the way up over the audio cable side, because those wires are thinner and I want to protect them. So slide the tubing over to one side, turn on your lighter, and heat up the shrink tubing, and it will shrink around the and it burned the enamel on the red one, but it's out of the way, so it won't matter too much. Okay, so shrink it up. Try not to overheat them, or it will burn the shrink tubing and possibly burn a hole through it, so just be aware. Okay, then you slide the thicker tube around it. I put the red cable in to provide a little bit of extra strength. Make sure that to cover the audio cable side, the rubber of it, and then same process, just heat up the shrink tube, gently rotate it so that you heat up all the way around it. Try not to apply the flame directly to the shrink tubing because it will carbonize it and could potentially burn it. Then when it's all sealed up, it looks like that. So that is a done audio cable. To test this, to see if it works right, what you can do is connect it to the detector. The white wire is the signal wire, so it goes to S, and the black wire is the ground, so it goes to minus. Plug it into the detector. Plug this into your microphone port on your computer. Make sure that the red wire is not connected. If it's connected, it could damage your computer, so that's important. So make sure that you have cut both of those red ones. Then you can switch it over to data when you have a source nearby, and you should see pulses on the computer. So if you hit record, you can play it back and you should hear the clicks. So that's one way to test it. You can test it with a multimeter as well. So yeah, and now we're going to show you how to make the smartphone cables. So the smartphone cable, you've got 4 rings on the cable and 4 wires. So ever so often the wires stick together like this one has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the solder joint and then they come right apart. So we only need 2 of the wires, so we're going to cut the blue and the green. So cut just below the solder joint on the blue, and on the green we're going to need our other connector. Your kit should have come with 2. Sometimes these are soldered together, so you're going to want to desolder them. Again, pull a little more than 1 inch. We don't want red. We don't want that to make electrical contact, because that would provide power to the APOC, and you would see 9 volts on that. So we want to make sure that that's cut. All right, same procedure. We want to slide these on to the black and the white one. These are the thin tubes again. And then with the thicker tube, we run that over the 4 wires. You can do this before or after you've cut the blue and the green one. Probably before is better, because it'll fray a little bit and slide it pretty far. Even, I mean, honestly, up to the plug is great, because then it stays far out of the way. Alright, then we isolate the blue and, the red and the copper one. And the connection for this is red to black and copper colored on this side to white. So let's start with the red. Gonna tin. I'm gonna tin that. Tin that. Sometimes they don't come perfectly tinned, so it's not a bad idea to run a little bit of solder over it. I've got a little bit of solder on my soldering tip. Perfect. Oh, yeah. Remember to let it cool down before you pull the iron away, and then just do the little pull test. Okay, so then we're gonna line up our copper on the audio cable side, the smartphone cable, and we're gonna connect that to white on the servo side. So we got the shrink tube came off, so I'm just putting it back on. Isolate the copper wire, and then I'm going to set it so that and then same deal, I'm going to tin the copper side, tin the white side, and tinning just means I put a little bit more solder on. I put some solder on the iron itself, so I put a little bit so that it's beaded up on the iron. I'm holding the cable. Well, I'm holding. I'm gonna tape one of the cables down so that it doesn't move as I'm trying to do this. Pull the cable up so it stands out, so then that way if I manipulate the other one it won't interfere. So alright, so I'm going to make sure I got some solder on the tip. Line them up so that they are parallel and only the tinned parts touch. Heat it up, apply some more solder. I've got a nice little ball around it. And that's what it should look like. Okay, so then we heat shrink it, same deal as before. Slide the, I want these, the blue and the green, outside of the shrink tube. I don't want them inside it. Heat it up from underneath. Try not to have the flame touch the shrink tube. You might have to slide the shrink tube up towards the rubber part of the audio cable as you shrink tube it, because they elongate as they heat up. Okay, outstanding. Okay, then we do the outer cover. Slide it back over. Make sure that the red cable is inside. Make sure it's not making electrical contact with anything, so it's just floating. In this case, it's the end of it has been cut and it's just sitting next to the shrink tubing, so there's no way that it's going to make a connection to anything. And then I make sure that I'm covering the rubber side so that it has something to grab onto. And then with the lighter, heat it up from underneath. Rotate it as you heat it up. Try not to have the flame touch the shrink tubing directly. And we got another cable. Now I'm going to show you how to test this one. It's really easy. So if it worked right, you can take a smartphone, unlock it, plug it in just like before. We have, we do the black side on the minus sign and the white wire side on the S. Okay, so you plug that in. So when your phone is unlocked, connect it to your audio port, and then if it works right, you should see that you see an external mic plugged in. With an iPhone, you need the jumper connected, or else it won't see it. And then turn it to data. If you have a audio recording program, so in this case I use a voice recorder, and go ahead and set it to record, and then you should see, set it to data, and then you should see pulses on the smartphone, but it won't see audible sounds, just the detections. So then when you play it back, you'll hear the clicks on the device, and that's how you know that the cable is working correctly. So yeah, there's a pulse. And they sound a little bit muffled, but... So that is a successful cable. The device can see it, and it does transfer clicks properly. Alright, thank you for watching.